Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Franz Sidney. So, welcome to Create with Franz. And this is a show where we talk about how to create the life that we want using neuroscience based mindset tips and advice. And I get best expert in the world. And today, one from Texas. So, that's Wendy Rosenthal. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Franz. I'm so happy to be here.
I know, and it's been so exciting to talk about this topic that is, and I think it's going to help everyone. It's a topic about challenges. Why on earth everything happens to me? Why is going wrong? Life is just happening to me. This happens and that happens, that happens. And Wendy has her own proposition. Is life happening to me or for me? And she will show us during the interview how she turned her challenges into opportunities to grow into. So welcome again. And let's see, tell me a little bit about who you are and how you came to this proposition.
So, Franz, I've been very lucky over the last 5 years to be an executive business coach through my company, Pathfinder One to One. But before that, I spent 20 years in business consulting around marketing and strategy. And so I have worked across the world and with many different companies and having to run my own business in the process. And through that experience, I've faced many challenges, as we all do. I can cite many times within, particularly my business, where external things would happen in the world, 9/11 being one of them, ruined a whole series of businesses that I was working with at the time. Um, I mean, even the pandemic, as recently as the pandemic, definitely impacted things. So I started to notice that there were all these external things happening in the world that I would take on board as it's happening to me, and it was not productive. And I was really seeking a way to change my mindset so that I can manage my business better. And then I became an executive coach, and I realized that so many people are facing this every day because guess what? Challenges are going to happen. It is absolutely inevitable that a challenge is going to happen. It doesn't mean it's going to happen every day, but it is going to happen because that's just the way the world works. So I was really seeking ways to not just say, okay, I'll look this as this challenge as an opportunity, because for me, that wasn't meaningful or deep enough. I wanted something that really would spark my own personal way of managing it, and then ultimately something that I can use with my clients that's easy, that's powerful, that's meaningful, and actually really shifts the way you see your whole world.
Yes, makes sense because we can't just live as a victim of things happen from external places. And of course, there are tragedies every day, sickness and all sorts, infidelity, your business crash, and it's an earthquake. There will be a lot of things that happen. And we just have to what's the silver lining. There is something that we can get in the end, even the fact that we just survived, isn't it?
Yeah, and you don't want to just survive it. You want to th thrive through it. I mean, I can even give you a quick personal example of something that happened, like literally my consulting business before I became a coach, or before I made it my day job. I was working on a very large project in New York City. I was very happy with the work that I was doing, and everybody around me loved the work that I was doing. And it was coming into October 2019. I was ending the first part of the contract. I was expecting that the client was going to renew. And I was flying back and forth to New York like every week. I was on a plane 2 times a week. And I was in the middle of New York, right? Middle of Manhattan. And so came on November, and the client decided to go in a completely different way, had nothing to do with my work product. They changed everything. And therefore, I got the news that my contract was not going to be renewed. And it was important. I'm a small company. I was relying on this for another year. Completely was like in the moment kind of devastating. I enjoyed the work as well. You get very attached to the teams, the people, and I was not happy about it. And then I reminded myself that this is happening for me, not to me. And what does that look like? And I'll explain later how to make that shift. And going through that process helped me with perspective. It helped me think through the challenges I was going to face, by having less income at that moment. And then I started kind of reshaping the direction I was taking my company. But the most interesting part about it is as we all know, in the United States, New York was kind of the epicenter of COVID at the very beginning. And I have a husband that is older, much older than me. I have who has some bronchial issues. I take care of an older mother who is very susceptible to things. Had I been going back and forth to New York in the heat of all of that at that moment in time, my life could have taken a completely different trajectory. So not only did having this mantra in my head help me strategically direct my company to a better place, it also helped me realize something that maybe only would have happened with hindsight 10 years later, right? I could have looked back and said, oh, I skirted an issue. But as COVID was happening, I was like, oh my gosh, this was such a great blessing that I wasn't going to be on airplanes traveling back and forth to New York, possibly being in a place where I could get infected myself and have health challenges myself, but more importantly, have a young son. It could have made it, a big challenge for others as well in my life. So that's just a little example of how using this helped me really motivate myself, understand the ramifications, and take a different trajectory, which was huge.
Isn't that about perspective?
So much about changing your perspective.
Yes.
It's all about reframing how you view things and why it's so important to reframe. I mean, that's kind of key to, I think, good coaching is to help your clients reframe their lives in a way that helps them unlock their greatness and show the world who they are and be more transformative. But yeah, it comes down to that.
Absolutely. And you were mentioning in your notes that you've been into spirituality and you integrated that wisdom into your practice. What does that mean in layman's?
So for me, what it means is a phrase that I use over and over again, kind of to guide my value system, and that's first internal, then external. Okay. Spirituality for me, it's not about a faith or religion. It's about a system that says we actually have so much more control over how we experience the world. But you have to look internal first. You have to go here in order to change what's happening out there. Right. And I think people operate more on an external reactive way. Like something's happening out there, then this is how it's affecting me. Right. We don't realize that if we change our consciousness and our view of how we're seeing things, again, going down to reframing, we actually can see the world in a much different way and be far more successful. I always tell my clients, look, there are people who make millions in a down market. When the economy's tanking, there are still people who make millions. Why is that? Because they reframe it and they see it as an opportunity. They go in first and they look at what can be done and how they can see the world in a more positive way. So for me, spirituality, it's coming from that perspective, taking ownership of the fact that we have way more power than we even think we do. So it's coming from that, using kind of the spiritual concepts of the game of life. This is a playing field that we all have similar rules, just like physics, gravity. We all have those similar rules that we're operating by when you know more about them. And this is one of them that, we can shape our consciousness, then we're happier, more successful, and more fulfilled in general.
So our happiness doesn't really depend on what is happening around us, but what's happening inside us. So it's an ecosystem and we have more control of what happens inside us. So it's not the situation, but how we react to the situation, how we start looking at possibilities and getting this challenge and as a tool for transformation into a newer way of thinking, for example, of a new being. We can restart a new life completely, or a death, a divorce, or losing work, or becoming disabled. It is possible to find happiness.
100%. It's not even possible. It's natural for us to be able to do that. It really is. Even through intense challenges, which again, we all face in our own ways. There's no person that walks on this planet that is not going to face something hard for us. It may not feel hard, or it may not be, what somebody would categorize maybe as difficult, like maybe losing a parent when you're young or something like that, or having a traumatic experience. But we all experience trauma and challenge throughout our lives at whatever level that means for us. And we have the absolute natural ability to reframe it. And many examples of that, Franz, all over. There's so many books and so many stories of people who rise out of challenges.
Yes.
The people who do it most effectively, I think, are the people who have the mindset. They may not say it the way I'm saying it, but they have a mindset that says, this is happening for me, not to me. And there's reasons why that works, which I'm happy to share with you.
Yeah, I'll be very happy to hear, and I'm sure our audience will do that. We sometimes recognize that we went through something and we got better. And I have a few challenges in the past few years, and I recently from the UK to the US, and one of my best friends, she said, "You turned every challenge into an opportunity." I'm just like so impressed how you did it. I just didn't realize that, but she said it. Did I? And so maybe sometimes it's just natural. Also, being a coach, I always looked in a different way of things. But I'm sure ours would love to have some practical tips, which is the basic mission of my podcast, is to person leave a podcast thinking, wow, that was good and I can do something today. So I know you have plenty of tips. So let's get them all out so we can really create this life. I'm very excited to hear. Guys, pick up to take notes.
Well, let me just first set the stage a little bit of why this is happening for me, not to me, like what focusing on that helps us do. Okay. Because there's some really, I'm super practical. Like even though I come from a very spiritual perspective, I'm very practical. It has to work for me and I have to understand it in that context. So the first thing that this phrase does in a situation is it sets the frame for how you're going to operate in that challenge, right? And first impressions are incredibly important. Even the first impression that you make to yourself about what's happening, right? So that coming from that perspective immediately, even when it feels like it's impossible, even saying it out loud helps you have that first impression that says, this is something that I can be proactive in. It's something I can take as a positive. I can take it as a positive now, even though I might not see it. So it sets the stage immediately for how you are going to operate throughout what you have to do to deal with the challenge. So it's like a little break, right? It's like a little disruptor that helps you kind of pull yourself quickly up. Also, this mindset allows for a person to put space between the problem and themselves, right? So there's many studies that talk about how objectivity helps us manage in life. If it isn't our problem, look, that's why coaches are really good and they get paid a lot of money because they're really good at dealing with other people's problems, right? They have objectivity. They're able to step back and see things from a distance. So when you say this is happening for me, not to me, you're actually giving space because you can say, well, if it's happening for me and not to me, then the problem is separate from me, right? And now I can look at it in a much more objective way. And then you fall into the pattern that, if you're problem solving it in your work, it's like we're used to those kinds of objective problem solving patterns. And so this helps you get there faster, which is very helpful. For me, one of the most important things that this phrase does is it helps you step out of a victimhood mindset. Now, there are many books and much research done about a victimhood mindset and what it does to us. And it never really helps us, right? And what happens is when you have a victim, if you're in that victim mode, right, then you are looking at the world in a way where you have an adversary or a system that you believe is hurting you, right? You're giving power to that adversary and to that system. And then your mission, unfortunately, and they've shown that these patterns happen, the mission becomes one of trying to make others see that you've been victimized. So it's like repeating the story over and over of what happened to you instead of doing something about it. The other thing is you are looking for acknowledgement that your trauma is something special, right? So, in that seeking of acknowledgement, you tend to make decisions that don't really help the problem. And then, third, you end up seeking retribution because we want retribution for those that hurt us. And that, again, that pushes us into a place where we're making decisions that are coming from not a healthy place, but from one that keeps us really stuck in that challenge instead of letting us be released from that challenge. So the moment that you say this is happening for me, not to me, the adversary goes away, right? That person is not there, that system is not there. And it allows you to actually go into a place of problem solving, of transformation, of personal growth, because you're in a way taking, I don't want to say responsibility, but you're accepting that this challenge is going to have a positive impact on me, whether I can see it or not. And losing that victim mindset is, I mean, priceless, to be honest. The other thing that it does by saying that this is happening for me, not to me, is to allow you to control the situation. And Franz, I don't know about you, but all of us have a little bit of control freak in us. Don't you agree? Whether we say it or not. So it when we say this is happening for us instead of to us, we're actually taking control back, right? When you let the external world rule you, you're giving away your power. If we say this is for me, then we control the situation. We control how we decide to do something about it. We focus our energies on making it something that will help me, not hurt me. And so it's like you become the conductor of the symphony of the situation. And your choices become clearer, right? Because you're saying I'm in control, and we all kind of like to be in control at one point or another. And then the last reason I feel like this really inspires me personally is because it inspires proactive responses. When I say this is happening for me, I then take positive steps to fixing it instead of negative steps, where again, it goes kind of dips back into that victimhood space. When we're proactive in anything, that means we're not putting our head in the sand. So I don't know about you, but how many times you've been in a challenge where you kind of want to run away, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to deal with it. When we say this is happening for me, not to me, it takes our head up out of the sand, because if it's happening for me, then you get to choose how you deal with it. You get to approach it because you know you're going into it from a place of strength, not a place of weakness or I'm hiding or I'm ashamed or I've done something wrong. So it breaks that cycle that happens so often to us when we're dealing with challenges that are uncomfortable for us. So it's for these reasons why I think this very simple phrase, this is happening for me, not to me, is so powerful. And in order to kind of implement it, here's what I would recommend, unless you have any questions before I go ahead.
No, I want to hear them all.
Okay. So because I'm very practical and because I want it to be very simple for your listeners and for anybody that I'm working with, I have 3 very simple tips and recommendations. One is adopt this mantra, right? Really into your world. And how do I do this? Personally, how I did it is I write things down. So it's near me. If it's happening, this is happening for me, not to me. Very clear, very simple, something I can relate to. So in the event that something does happen, quickly as you can, either put it into your mind as a mantra, saying it, 5, 10 times. This is happening for me, not to me. This is happening for me, not to me. Write it down. I find that when I write things down, I embody it and embrace it more. Um, do a meditation, I'm very much about doing very short, powerful meditation. Take 2 minutes, clear your mind, put yourself in a place that is comfortable for you and visualize your favorite place and then say this over and over for a minute and then leave that space feeling very empowered. However you feel comfortable connecting to it, that's the place to start. Okay, it's that giving you that first impression to yourself that you've got this, it's here for you, you can do anything you want with it. Then I recommend taking some time and actually writing down the challenge. It's really interesting, Franz, when we are faced with challenge, sometimes the challenge, it feels like there's so many things happening, so much is being thrown at us at once. Like, maybe you've heard people say, oh, I feel so overwhelmed because so many things are coming at us at one time. A lot of times the challenge actually is very like straightforward. It's one challenge, let's say. So that could be, in my business, the challenge really wasn't that the client didn't want to work or couldn't work with me anymore. It was more about me feeling the stress of what's going to happen if I don't have the finances. So when you take that moment to write down what the real challenge is, it's very powerful because then you get rid of the noise. Okay. After you've done that, I recommend uh, um, finding a way to recognize that challenge in other places that you've had in your life, because we tend to repeat our challenges. I don't know, this is a whole nother discussion, but challenges create limited beliefs, and those limited beliefs keep us attracting those same challenges over and over. So this is a great, in this step, by writing it down, it's a great opportunity to kind of review what that limited belief might be so that you can actually move past it. Okay, so really taking the time to identify what the challenge is and then see where that might be happening to you over and over, and then write down how that challenge or how this challenge might be that transformative opportunity for you. Can you see it in that moment? Can you see how it would happen? For me, in my example, I could see that if I could get past this and plan and organize instead of being afraid that my finances wouldn't last, it transformed how I dealt with money for sure. And by seeing that immediately, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a good way for me to learn better how to budget because I suck at it. And that's what drives my fear. So sorry, suck is kind of a bad word for sex, but I wasn't so good at it. Then the third step after that is to build an action plan. Build an action plan that says this from the perspective of this is happening for me, not to me. What am I going to do about it if this is for me? And when you do that, it's so creative. You come up with so many great ideas for how to deal with things. It sparks your creative mind. And if you're doing that for the challenge itself and for it being a transformative opportunity, then you can have action items for both. So in my example, it was okay, I needed to wind down the contract. I needed to make sure I got all of the final payments in. I made sure I had to get all of the things I need to do to close that contract out. I had to create a new budget. But also the transformation for me was to have action plan that reminded me that I am very skilled at what I do and that clients are always coming, right? And as long as I open myself up to that, I'm going to be fine. And sure enough, I was. So those are my three tips.
And be so wise. And I was just listening and saying, yes, that's what I believe. And I I was just thinking while you were talking about it, that, the attention always is on something. I'm focused on 100 things. So where the attention is, where the energy will go. So if you're stuck in the past and you're moaning and complaining, you're going to relieve those negative emotions. You're going to be stuck in this emotional negative state. And also, I remember from my training, when we revisit the past, the cells that are involved with memory will be a little bit softer and less permeable, so they can be modified so much that we can actually modify the past memory. And then when we change topic in our mind, solidifies again. There's a protein thing. I can't remember physical and anatomical details, but trust me, how it happens. And we consolidate a new memory, so change the memory so much that you might revisit your journal and look at a past event that you keep saying to people, this happened, Joe Block said this and I said that, and this happened, it's my fault, whatever. And then when you go to your journal, you're like, oh, actually, I was totally wrong. And it's something different. It's because every time we think about it, we keep adding things, taking away stuff. And that's why police, when they do investigation, they look at lots of witnesses. They will hear lots of versions of a story because we remember it differently, don't we? And the important thing is every time we go back to this bad situation, we are reliving these emotions. Those emotions, we cannot fix the present situation. We cannot, because it's a negative emotion. So it's important to be projected. I remember Jeffrey R. Holland, which is a member of my church, very high up, said, there is no tragedy bad enough that moaning about it will not make it worse. So the more we moan and complain, but we are in a helpful state. So it's important to say, yes, it's bad, it hurts. It will be a moment of shock. No, that will be the pain, the searing pain, really so bad. But there is a moment of recognition that we're here laughing to have joy. And we can find joy in the most complex situation. I mean, I always hear from people, I've been to Africa, so, and Cambodia, so people that are really poor, they have nothing, they're happy. Yeah. And they don't have anything we have that we're to have. So there must be something there in what we're focusing on. So really thank you for this focus on what is important, because since we lose focus on what really matters, don't we?
Totally. And if you don't have a practice that you can fall back on, then you do the repeated, it's the over and over, the limited beliefs, this is happening. And why do you think the universe is bringing you something that's happened over and over? You're bringing that to you, by the way. We think it comes from out here. No, you're bringing it to you, because at the end of the day, if I go to the spiritual side, our souls want to grow. So we want to leave those repetitive negative behaviors behind, and the challenges are the things that help us do it. So if you can, again, go back to the simple phrase, this is happening for me, not to me, then you give yourself the opportunity to actually get rid of those things. They don't have to happen anymore.
Yes. And very, very little happens beyond our control. There's lots of other stuff we can do something about, and I'm thankful for those opportunities to grow. So I'm really thankful that you came over here talk about, Wendy, because this important thing is mindset, the reframing it. It's such a basic thing. We always say woo woo. It's just how the mind works. We have to focus on what is helpful so we can get out of a situation. And that's what we'll do with our child. We say to a child coming back from school or hurt, oh, let's talk about how it hurts. Can you come back tomorrow and tell me how much it hurts here and how it was so naughty to you? Can we talk about it in next week? Can I remind Christmas Day in 5 years? How bad was the teacher that hurt you? No, we're going to say to our child, oh, come on, give me a hug. It's going to be better. Look, we heal so quickly. You won't even notice it. Let's go and do something else to distract. We're going to do everything, aren't we?
Yes, exactly. Well, I appreciate so much this opportunity, Franz. It's been such a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for listening to these amazing episodes that will help you. Hopefully you feel a little bit happier about your situation and what you can do about it. And if you're really stuck and you're going back in circles, then to go to a coach, to a therapist, to
Totally.
a course, a tuition. There'll be something that can help you. Just think about there is always something to do. Even if you become deaf, blind, paralyzed, there's something.
Always.
Something.
Always.
Yes.
We can't do, by the way, we can't do it. None of this we can do alone, because we will never have as much perspective as we need sometimes. So it always, even if it's sharing it with a friend, just breaking out of that, that cycle of being alone. So I think that's a great point.
Thank you so much. So everyone, please share and subscribe if you would like, and write a review for the podcast so that more people can find how to create the life that they want. Thank you, everyone, and see you next. Bye.